La 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 lava. Chicken.
These are my favorite metal albums of 2025 so far, starting with Fleshbore with Painted Paradise. The first album to really blow me away this year back in January, and a big step up from the last one. Amber's Gathering was good, but this follow-up blows that one out of the water in every possible way for fans of Archspire, Exocrine, and Surruption in particular. The guitars are just so much fun in their chaos, and the rapid-fire vocals never fail to put a smirk on my face. This set the tone for another crazy year in death metal right from the start, and it continues to hold its own months later, which is kind of insane considering what an insane year it's been for death metal. Next up is Cryptosis with Celestial Death. This Dutch band instantly became one of my new favorites with 2021's prog thrash banger Bionic Swarm, and they did not disappoint with this anticipated follow-up. And seemingly not content to be pigeonholed out of the gate, Celestial Death finds them very actively pushing their boundaries even further while still serving up the heaviness and speed that I'm looking for. Singles like Faceless Matter and Static Horizon made it clear from the spooky synths and emphasis on blackened atmosphere that this record would be a different beast entirely. I was a little worried at first that it might get lost up its own ass along the way, but no, this is another banger from a band that you need on your follow list. Then there's Deafheaven with Lonely People with Power. Now, I know that I may come off as a hater of this band sometimes, but I've enjoyed moments from them over the years, particularly New Bermuda, and I was more than happy to shout this one out as what I think may be their best album to date. This feels like a culmination of all the lessons learned over the past few albums, with both the black metal elements sounding as sharp and icy as ever, as well as the shoegaze parts going toe-to-toe with classics from that genre. Every song is damn near a 10 for me, no lulls, no filler, just a front-to-back epic of an album. Next up is Pathogenic with Crowned in Corpses. This Massachusetts progressive death metal band returns after 6 years, proving once more why I am a fan of quality over quantity. This is a delightful mix of tech death and genty grooves that I think should be pleasing to a pretty broad spectrum of the metal community. I could probably most closely compare this to something like Born of Osiris meets Job for a Cowboy, but with roots much more firmly on the death metal side of the spectrum. Lots of impressive performances, good mix of ferocious singles with more expansive and progressive compositions. Before we continue, as always, just a reminder, if you're enjoying the video so far, hit the like button and comment below your own favorites, because these are just mine and I want to hear yours as well. But next up, we have Valdrin with Apex Predator. I was just singing the praises of this Ohio black metal band's 2023 album, Throne of the Lunar Soul, on the Best of the Decade So Far list, and once more, they do not disappoint with this fifth outing, delivering supreme atmosphere that is at once entrancing and menacing. More incredible performances and carefully woven songwriting across the board, from the guitars and vocals to the synths. And as the counterpoint to the last record's more expansive hour and 13-minute runtime, this one goes for the throat with an incredibly focused 30. Next up is Allegaeon with the Ossuary Lens. The seventh album from this Colorado technical and progressive death metal band, and the first in 10 years with returning original vocalist Ezra Haynes. And as much as I loved Damnum, I think that they've managed to top themselves again with this one. Far from the more Opeth-influenced sounds of that last record, this is a full fury tech death marvel. There are still some moody, clean moments as with single Driftwood, but it's largely full-on ragers like the Swarm, Imperial, and Dark Matter dynamics that I'm after. Another kind of surprise on this list for me, we have Epica with Aspiral. This band pretty much single-handedly finally got me into symphonic metal with the epic Omega, and now 4 years later they've managed to match that same level of quality with this 9th outing. I know that the longtime fans seem to rank this one lower, but going through the discography in order for the tier list, I genuinely think that these are some of their most impressive arrangements to date. Seriously dynamic songwriting that is both complex and incredibly catchy, and with stunning performances across the board from Simone's always incredible singing to the symphonic additions to maybe some of their most fun and memorable guitar work as well. Then we have Cryptopsy with an insatiable violence. The 9th full-length album from this long-time-running and highly influential Canadian technical death metal band, following up the fantastic As Gomorrah Burns in 2023. And while that was a tough act to follow, I think that this album mostly delivers on the same promise of high-octane brutal madness. Some serious riffs and drumming all over this record with very little downtime in its more than tight 34-minute package. And then some great notes of dark atmosphere that stuck with me as well on the likes of Our Great Deception, Embrace the Nihility, and Closer Malicious Needs. Then we have Vildhjarta with, I'm gonna say the title in English because I'm just not gonna try it again. Where the Forest Sings Under the Eternal Spruce Trees. The third thunderous Threnody of Thal from this Swedish band, a description I was so proud of I needed to use it again here. And where past releases have found me frankly kind of bored and waiting for it to be over with, this one feels like it has more layers to peel back and standout moments like those venomously enunciated snarls and rolled R's that show up a little over the third of the way through Sargasso. And also on that note, I am loving the sparing use of clean vocals, seemingly more dynamic songwriting, and increased focus of the less than hour runtime after the seemingly endless 80 minutes of the last record. Alright, I'll try with a few of these here. In addition to Sargasso, I'm also partial to Ylva, Der Mosen Mutter Havet, and Regnet Thee. Then there's Ghostbath with Rose Thorn Necklace. The return of this North Dakota band with album 5 after really wowing me with the more dark, depressive turn of 2021's appropriately titled Self-Loather. This album continues that overtly black metal trajectory while also continuing to experiment with unique atmospheric elements, especially on tracks like Stamen and Pistil. It really has been satisfying to see this band really prove themselves as a project dedicated to growing in its craft and being far more than the gimmick they were once accused of being. Another album I see some people putting down, but if you ask me, the compositions here are as lush and lovely as they are grim and forlorn. Next up is the Halo Effect with March of the Unheard. I've been a little lukewarm with the last two Dark Tranquillity records, but where those have just been solid, this union of members of both that and In Flames has so far yet to let me down. You really do get the best of both worlds on the sophomore effort with those unmistakable classic In Flames riffs, the lush atmosphere of the Dark Tranquillity synths, and of course, Michael's always powerful vocals. The absence is everywhere. Good away. We just close our eyes. Lots of great tracks to get their hooks in you here, my personal favorites being Detonate, Our Channel to the Darkness, What We Become, and March of the Unheard. If I'm being honest, I prefer the debut overall, but there's really not a dull moment here, and it was another one that wowed me early on in the year and continues to do so. Then we have Sigh with I Saw the World's End, Hangman's Hymn 2025. Another case where making a re-recording is a tall order, as this was already one of my favorite albums from one of my favorite more underground bands, but leave it to this Japanese avant-garde crew to somehow nail every aspect of the performance perfectly almost 20 years later. Seriously, had I not known, I would have just assumed that this was a remaster, because the only difference is really the vastly improved production. Every note, every scream, and all the little quirks that made it great to begin with are still here, and the emphasis on the brass instruments comes through stronger than ever. Then there's Eluveitie with Anu. The Swiss folk metalers have returned with their 9th album, and while I've been less of a fan of their material since Anna Murphy's exit, this feels like a real return to form for them. Songs like Premonition, The Prodigal Ones, and Awin definitely caught my attention, bringing back my favorite side of the band in the infectious folk instrumentation, heavier elements, and clean vocals, all seemingly in perfect harmony. Meanwhile, the softer moments are also much stronger here, foregoing the more pop sensibilities of the previous album in exchange for something much more breathtaking, namely perhaps Fabienne's strongest vocal performance yet in the title track. This album very much impressed and even surprised me in just how consistent and dynamically flowing it is front to back. Then there's the Callous Daoboys with I Don't Want to See You in Heaven.
Why all become cryptos? Why say what's left to sell? Make blocks for the sharper predator.
No surprise that this ended up on the list, as it's one of my favorite modern day bands, and they have yet to put out something that I didn't consider to be at least close to a 10 out of 10. And once more, their eclectic mix of influences from the Dillinger Escape Plan to Deftones and 2000s emo makes for an absolutely thrilling listen.
So if one day you've been out, it'll do before the burnout, I'll swim upstream again.
Insane mathcore breakdowns give way to smooth jazz with saxophone, and then I love Lemon without any of the heavy elements, but that guitar with the kind of Enrique Iglesias coded acoustic is just everything. I've been recommending this band to basically everyone I come into contact with, and have been very pleased to see that almost across the board people end up loving it. And then my favorite metal album of 2025 so far goes to Imperial Triumphant with Goldstar. One of my most anticipated releases of the year by far from this jazz-infused technical black metal trio, now going for round 6. And once more, I think it's one of their best, which is a tall order. If you watch the tier list, like, I think most of their albums are like top 2 tiers. Very concise 38-minute runtime, challenging them to offer something a bit more accessible this time, while still being very experimental as ever, delving into everything from Brazilian maracatu to African gnawa music. And then Thomas Hake of Meshuggah returns to guest, as does new collaborator Dave Lombardo. Another utter masterpiece from one of my favorite bands putting out music today. I'll be very surprised if anything else is able to dethrone this album over the next 6 months, but I am up to the challenge. Let's see what happens.
Do your worst.
Y'all check out this playlist for more of my favorite metal albums of the year by month, or this for your personal YouTube recommendation. Thank you so much for watching. Consider becoming a channel member or a patron if you really want to help me out, or buy some merch. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.